Hi, welcome to The Pursuit of Truth. So I've been watching these things on Netflix. The first one is called, oh god, let me check. Put the glass on to see the TV. Life After Death with Tyler Henry, and the other one is Surviving Death. So Tyler Henry, I suppose a lot of people might already know of his name. He's been on a lot of E stuff. I think he even was on a recent Kardashians. I don't know if it's a Disney one or Keeping Up. But he's a celebrity who was a medium, who does a lot of these celebrity things. I think most of them are on E. So this one was on Netflix. It's quite interesting the way they edited it. They put together his life story, him trying to find out that his mother was his mother's mother was kidnapped and raised by another person. So they had that intertwined with him doing mediumship. And he does it in an interesting way because he scribbles when he's doing when he's receiving this information. The only thing, there was things, it was really interesting, and I don't know whether I believe in it or not believe in it. I mean, I'm interested in it, like I'm interested in UFOs and ghosts and paranormal and stuff like that. And I'm interested in, obviously, Most Haunted and Derek Acora, who is maybe more of an entertaining medium. Whereas with this guy, he, even if he isn't, genuine, then he is very positive, and he's giving these people maybe what they need, and he seems very wise. So he comes across as a very genuine person. Of course, the thing is, it's difficult to prove anything to anyone, especially when you have a bias or you have an understanding. And, often a lot of us are taught about science and taught not to believe in magic and all that kind of stuff. When you meet different people from different parts of the world, they have a different understanding of this. And then you're presented with these things. And then the problem is, because you have that, DOS system, I was going to say, in your brain, then it's difficult for you to get around that. So you instantly just write it off. But it was very interesting. And what interested me also with this Surviving Death program, I don't know if they're made by the same production company or they got some involvement, because they both sort of were talking along the same theme of that we need to be looking at life and death in a different way. And it matches with, I believe it's in the Quran. I should have got the verse. But if it's not in the Quran, it's in a hadith. About the idea of heaven and where we are now on this place that we found ourselves on, which we call the earth, that they exist in the same space. And of course, that kind of concept, 100 years ago would not have been understood. Nowadays, there's multiverses and parallel universes and like Marvel things and DC and all sorts of things, and even Doctor Who. So we all understand that kind of concept now of being in the same space but a different time or a different dimension. And that would correlate with these documentaries, which seem to suggest that these energies of dead people are all around us. The only thing is, that was what made me think of, sort of gave it some validity religious wise. But the problem is if it is true that we are in the same plane of existence, that there's a different wavelength or a different dimension or whatever, but it's in the same spatial time place, then when mediums are doing this, how do they, there must be, how many people have died since 2023? Since how long has man been around? 20,000 years, 30,000, 100,000, I don't know how many, a million years has man been around. So how many souls or consciousness or energies are still floating around? You think it'd be very difficult for mediums to sort of get away, I'm trying to find a new one. You'd think they'd be finding loads of people from, back when. And then I had this idea of what if, these consciousnesses, this energy, what if we were, although it doesn't quite work, if we were just a freak and we just existed, and we evolved from, you know, sea creatures to mammals to man. And when we started dying, all this energy started popping up, and that's what created God. This energy of all of us became so much that it created the, you know, the God that we all believe in. I suppose the problem is that God was meant to exist before we but then, of course, obviously since then there's been lots more energy. But anyway, that's what came into my mind, so I just thought I'd blab that out. But what was interesting is this idea of that, you know, like one of the parents on the Surviving Death was a bit more scientific, was saying, you know, their belief in energy can't just disappear. It has to, you know, exist. You know, the energy within us, the consciousness, that spark of life that when you're dead goes, it transfers, it doesn't just disappear. But I suppose it could do, like a battery, you know, fades, or, you know, electricity in a plug, it fades out of time. I suppose the other thing is that where were we before? If you believe in this energy, you know, always existing, what was before you were a baby? I suppose you were the energy inside the human being before, you know, I suppose that also correlates with the idea in the Quran that, or Hadith, where it mentions the spark of life is in the sperm. So maybe that is the energy that is, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but I suppose a different way of looking at the, you know, mediumship and the dead and afterlife in a less religious way of like, and we're all living with harps in the clouds, and being more scientific in this idea of energy. We all believe in energy, and what does that mean for us then? Does that mean that, you know, around me at this very moment there are billions of energies who lived in this where I am, or where you are, that are all around us, and they are just energy now rather than conscious beings, or they don't have the vessel to be able to articulate these things. The only other thing I noticed with Tyler was the way they would speak to him, you know, very, very quick. You'd think, like, you know, when you see other mediums, it takes them a long time, you know, for anything to come through. Whereas with some of them, they seem to be so fluent, and a lot of the same things. I suppose the things like death, there's not many more deaths you can have. Either it's an accident or a murder, or it's a timely death. You know, there did seem to be a high percentage of accidents and that kind of thing. And of course, I guess the easiest way to fake this would be the production team obviously have to meet these people first, because they want to find out about their story, because they want a backstory, they want something interesting, they don't want something mundane, they want something where, you know, it has a murder, or it has some kind of mystery, or it has some kind of, you know, gripping story, because this is the production company making a TV program. So obviously they've had to have gone before to vet the people to give to him. Obviously they're going to say that he is never told of this, but of course if you wanted to fake it, that'd be the easiest way. Or obviously these days, you know, obviously in the past it would have been easier for a medium to say, look, there's no way I could have known this information, whereas nowadays everyone can be Googled or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and there's a lot of information out there that you could glean. And I noticed there's a lot of the people he talked to were very wealthy, because you saw the houses that they lived within. There wasn't very many people living, say, in New York, Queens or anything like that. So that was a little bit the problem is my worry is that people who are maybe a bit more wealthy, a bit more social, may want, you know, this attention and etc., and therefore may not be as trustworthy as people who are, well, I suppose people who need more money would maybe, or less trustworthy, I don't know. But it was very entertaining, very interesting, and I didn't feel that he was a bad person by what he was doing, even if he is faking it, because he was giving a lot of positivity, and he seemed a very genuine person, not very arrogant. Obviously, you know, from a money point of view, people could make a lot of money out of this, but that's the world that we live in. We live in a world where money is made the most important thing, and you can't really blame him for doing that. You must blame ourselves for keeping a system that is all about money and attaining money and making our value of our life and our existence based around money. whereas it doesn't need to be. And that's, you can see many of my pursuits of truth for that. And on the surviving death, they're going through the different, I haven't quite finished that yet, it's going through mediumship, it's going through paranormal, it's going through different ways of looking at death. There were a lot of interesting stories coming out from that, people being able to, out-of-body experiences when they were dead. There was one lady, I think it was in episode 1 or 2, where she was dead for half an hour to an hour on an operating table, and she was able to describe the instruments that were used. I mean, I suppose you could have had some kind of medical background to work that one out. She was blind, obviously there were other bits where the information that they gleaned, you'd think that, well, how would they have possibly known that? They're the ones that are more interesting when you think, how would they known that? Out-of-body experience, I suppose, could be explained by, once the body's awake, it has to make a, say you've been unconscious or in a coma or dead for a few minutes, and then you see the bright lights and all that. How do you know when you wake up that the moment you're talking about was that moment and not the moment when you gain consciousness and then you were in a dreamlike state and then you dreamt that? Because you can't, even when you're asleep, you can't spatially aware which, time that dream took place. Because there is no time in dreams or in unconsciousness or subconsciousness, whatever you want to call it. So that is, but when you can come up with information that you shouldn't know, some of it is there's a possibility you could research it. Depends how long it is till you're asked about these experiences. You could have gone away, looked it up, and now you tell your story. I suppose you say, well, why would anyone do that? Well, the reason is money and fame. A lot of people, as we know, love to like even on YouTube, do it just for the amounts of the views that they get, or even people put pictures these days on Instagram just because they want to get liked, because that's the culture and the system that we live within. And, for money aspect, you can sell your story, you can make a career out of these things. Write books and etc. If you try and write a book out of your imagination and go and give it to a publisher, no one's going to touch it. But if you've got a certain kind of story, then they will, because they know there's money to be made from these kinds of things. So there are reasons why people may fake this stuff or go and research it or do it or whatever, like there is with anything. But yeah, they're on Netflix at the moment, Surviving Death and Life After Death with Tyler Henry. I thought they were really interesting. They had a lot of interesting, thought-provoking things that made you think about how we live, back up the reason that why we should change the way that we live, because we're such short experiences. And there was one, I think it was the science one, where their child was at a camping thing. This is really the sad one of all of them. Their child went into a tent when it was windy. And the wind brought down a tree on top of the tent. The 2 other children couldn't get themselves out. He was trapped under his chest and died of asphyxia. And they were hoping for some kind of experience, and they were struggling with it. They went to these retreat things. This was on the Surviving Death one. And then eventually the father said there was one time when he saw a door opening and he saw his face and he felt so much love that it was just too much. I mean, I guess the thing is, you could say the brain can create these things if you really want them, but I suppose the thing at the end of the day, how do you ever get someone to believe if you're always going to say, well, that's not true, and this, that, and the other? Then you're never going to believe in anything that's not, slapping you around the face. And even that, you could say, was something. You can always, but I suppose the thing is, we as individuals ourselves are the only ones who can really experience for ourselves, and anyone else we have to trust or not. But if you've gone through that experience, either it's some kind of, it's real, or your mind has made it up. And then they were saying that the lady, she was in the kitchen and she smelt him as if he was right there. I don't know. Is it good to believe that we still exist? I mean, obviously, we all want to live forever, but we're not all going to live forever. Sadly, it was one of the neighbours. I'm talking about neighbours a lot. I talked about neighbours in a few Pursuit of Truth. I saw the ambulance come, and you always see ambulance come, and then you see the person back again. But this time, the person didn't come back. They died. I think it was actually this morning. we were told. And how sad it is to think that, I saw this person, walking around previously, and now that person's no more. And how sad it is that, maybe some diseases we could have done something about if we stopped mucking about and stopped working against each other and worked as humanity rather than enterprises and countries and businesses and etc., and wasting our energy. And to think that, how precious life is and how you don't know when it's gonna stop for you, and if there is an afterlife, whether there is a God, whether there is a heaven or reincarnation, or we are just all around our loved ones all the time until eventually, everyone's energy and there's no corporeal bodies, as it were. We're all energy, and that's all maybe we ever were. Well, maybe that's what we were from the beginning. Maybe that's what God is. He's energy. And that's why God says that he created us in his image. Maybe together we are all that energy, and to create us, he dispersed us into each of us, and that's why he says he's around us all the time. Is that a possibility that works within religion, it works within science? And then the day when there's no more energies, more bodies and everyone's energy, that's when we're all collective and we're all whole and we're all God. That was quite profound, actually, isn't it? Take care, Tazy. God bless and peace.